some years ago when I was doing the aggressive offender program, and I was working with guys about how to speak the helpful truth in their sometimes highly conflicted relationships. There was one guy who was explaining to the group, this was a group setting, and he was checking in. It was like he was having a conflict with his girlfriend because she really wanted to go to a concert that was coming up, and he didn't want to go. And I said, well, why don't you want to go? It's not a group you're into. He says, no, I love the group. Well, so why don't you want to go? He said, because my ex is going to be there. She loves that group. She's always going to be there, and she's going to start some shit. I said, well, so you're going to let the fact that your ex-girlfriend is going to be there stop you and your current girlfriend from doing something that you really enjoy doing? He said, yeah. I said, well, is there no way that you could deal with that with her? And he pretty much didn't think that there was anything he was going to be able to say to her where she wasn't not going to do something to interrupt his relationship with his current girl. I said, well, let's look at that. So we talked about what is it that he thought was going to happen, and could he anticipate the loop? How is this conversation going to go down? What do you think she's going to say? How's that going to impact you? What might you do in return? And in the course of that, we came to a new way of being for him when he was confronted by his ex-girlfriend in the lobby of this venue before the show started. He had this idea of what it was that was going to happen, but he was able to rethink that and to understand that in a new way, so that he had a new way of being, to where by the time we finished this conversation, he was looking forward to being able to have his ex come up and start something with him. So of course the next week we're checking in and said, well, how was the concert? And he says, oh, it was great, really enjoyed it. I said, yeah, but what happened with your ex? He said, she didn't show up. He was disappointed because he was really looking forward to embodying this new way of being. Now that almost never happens. It was great for him because the very fact that he had done the work of anticipating how he would speak the helpful truth freed him up to have more of the relationship that he needed with his current girlfriend. But it didn't do anything to deal with the old stuff, except it did for him. He was transformed by simply rehearsing the conversation that then never happened. Much more commonly what happens is that when I ask folks later, after they've kind of worked out what is their plan for this new way of being in which they speak the helpful truth, how did that go? More commonly they will say, oh, it didn't work, because it may be because I wasn't able to do what I planned to do. There was something I didn't anticipate, and it came up and it threw me off. So I wasn't able to embody this new way of being as I hoped it would. Sometimes they will say, oh, it didn't work because the other person didn't change. It's like, oh yeah, you can't change the other person. And I'm still counting on being able to be different in such a way that the other changes. Right? But most typically, I would say what happens is they say, well, yeah, I did it. It felt good. It worked for me in the moment. But long term, nothing's really going to be different. Right. Long term, nothing's going to be different unless I consistently show up differently. Unless this is a new way of being for me, so that every time this comes up, I get to practice it. It's like another opportunity for me to practice this new way of being. And I'm going to keep doing it over and over again. I'm going to sustain the change. I'm going to continue to be who it is that I'm choosing to be in a way that creates more of what I need. Because the loop, the context, the conversation, the system has these negative feedback loops that keep moving it back to homeostasis. It's going to move back to a way of being that is more like the way it's always been, unless we consistently show up differently. So that's why we want to notice that it feels good to speak the helpful truth. It is its own reward. Whether or not anybody else changes, the very fact that we're showing up in a way that has greater integrity feels solid. It feels like we're more grounded in who we really are. And that ultimately is what we're looking for, is to be who we choose to be in a way that is going to move us and ultimately everyone towards what we need.